Tania Bruguera, thank you so much for joining us in Conversatorio Cubano. You have been, I think, a personal hero of mine and to many people who will see this. A lot of people will see this and not know anything about Cuban art, nor its importance in the political trajectory of Cuba, especially in the last 30 to 40 years. So I really want to thank you for contributing and for being with us and taking the time to talk about both your art and your life in the general context of Cuba.
Thank you so much, Lillian. It's an honor for me to talk to you. It was an honor meeting you in person recently, and I've been an admirer of your work as well and read all your research and know your fierce defense of the history of Cuba. Thank you for that.
Well, so I'm going to jump in fact, with the very first time that I became aware of your work. And that was in 1996 to 1997 when I was doing my dissertation researching Cuba. And I believe it was at the Bienal of Havana, which is, for those who don't know, a very big art show. It was then that you exhibited, or you had made a piece for that, which was called estadística, or statistic. And then it is really a Cuban flag that is woven out of human hair. Everyone who saw it in my presence when I saw it just stood there and looked at this beautiful flag that was standing or hanging before them with great silent reverence, really, because they knew. I mean, the description said it. It sort of looked as if it had been made from braided human hair that had been then wrapped in a form of textile. It looked like the representation of so much suffering and so much, I think, self-sacrifice with which Cubans are very familiar for the cause of the patria. So, I wonder if you could talk about, how you feel with regard to that reaction that many Cubans have had over the years. I mean, every time I show this image, and it's no longer, in person, it's an image, a photograph that I took, I get the same reaction from my students. Now it's been decades of using that piece as a kind of a window onto the consciousness of what it might mean to be Cuban at any point. I also would love it if you could tell us a little bit about who you were 30 years ago when you made that piece.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. This is research, very long time ago. This is a piece from 1997. As you said, it was exhibited in the Havana Biennial. It is a big piece. There is a smaller one at the Museo de Bellas Artes, but the real piece is more than 3 meters by 2.5 meters or so. It's very big. And it took me almost, 7 or 8 months to finish, every day working on it. And it is indeed made of human hair. And at the time, I was an artist that believed that has gone through something that we might talk later probably, but through a very big process of understanding what I was living and the relation between truth and fakeness, because my origin is I am the daughter of a diplomat. So I lived from my 3rd year of life until my 10 years of life outside of Cuba. Mm-hmm. So I grew up listening to a wonderful Cuba that was talked about around me, as fictional, as an amazing as all these people who are not Cuban, who hear about Cuba outside. And at the same time, I was, in Lebanon during a war, or in Panama during the American invasion. So I was in this situation where I felt that I belonged to a place without understanding why. And I also didn't belong to a place I was living in. So it was this kind of conflicted relationship that I later understood. And then I was having a view of Cuba that was at the same time from the inside and from the outside. I think that's maybe what defined my work in a way at that time, because I had the distance to see it as a foreigner, as somebody from outside living somewhere else when I arrived, but I was living it when I came back at 10 years old. And the first thing that happened is that I immediately had a shock between what I heard and what I lived. And this has been maybe the conduit to all my work. This search for unveiling propaganda, the search for showing what I call truth, but maybe it's my truth or collective truth that is ignored by the news agencies or by historians, not in your case, but in general, the official history of Cuba. So that has been my search. At that time, it was very interesting that I immediately after I came to Cuba a year later, I started the art school when I was 12 years old. So I almost also relate Cuba with the process of doing art, in the sense that that was my way to understanding things through doing the art. I had a wonderful professor who was mi maestro, who is called Elso Padilla, Juan Francisco Sopadilla. And I remember one day, I was young and I didn't know how to do something. He took me, he was very tall, he took me out there and outside and say, yes, art can serve to understand life. So don't take it that way with the art. Art is not life, but it helps you to understand life. And I think that really marked me. I was very young, but it really marked me as a way to understand art. And this is where I was in 97. I also have gone through a situation of already having some censorship in my work earlier. So I felt that I was very free as an artist. Then I had this moment of censorship that became very personal. And then I had this moment where I didn't know what to do. And I went into performing because it was me, my body, and nobody could tell me you know what I mean? I had more agency because it was not about society. It was not. And unfortunately, I say, although people like the work, because I also think I like it too, but unfortunately, I went from trying to create a parallel realistic art production into a symbolic production. This is why I do the flag. And the flag is called, the title says it, a statistic is because everything Cuba was a number, which is not real, like everybody wants. And also it took from the Afro-Cuban tradition, because of course in Cuba, yes, my skin look white, but in Cuba, everybody goes to the Santero. You know, that's part of your everyday life. It's not like, I'm appropriating. No, that was my life, you know. And every time something happened, my mom ran with us to the Santero. So that was an everyday life for me. So in that tradition, around that year, I read Lidia Cabrera, and knowing from these practices that the hair was very important, because there is a myth with the hair in Santeria and all this Afro-Cuban, that if you have somebody's hair, you have power over that person. You can even do some
negative. You can
to actually
effectively, right?
And a spell, so that person will lose their mind, that person will lose who they are. So I really like that symbolism for Cubans, you know, as if somebody has done that to them.
Yes, and the piece actually has a lot of like tertiary legibility to Cubans that is not immediately apparent to anybody who might be struck by it, but has not lived the Cuban experience. And so when you are familiar with Afro-Cuban culture and traditions and these beliefs, whether you practice them fully or or not, you get it. Like you get it. It really, it gets you in a very deep way. Because then as many of your pieces do, it asks the viewer, if that viewer is Cuban, to question, like, who actually holds our hair, who has captured us, who has our soul, and that you have woven it into a flag. It just it speaks for itself in many different ways. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I think my work always have like 3 levels of understanding. I did that very unintentionally at the beginning, or very by chance, but now I'm more aware of it, where there is something personal, of course. Like, I never do work because, there is a news and I need to record that in art. Like, it's more about something that really impact me, or something I don't understand why it's happening, because some things you're like, this could be solved quite easy, why they are not living, for example, why they are not living power. Of course, it's more complicated than that, but something that really impact me personally, that I don't understand why it's happening, something that is related with our history, and something that is related to politics. So there are different levels. So this is why I think somehow, no matter where you're coming from, you will understand more or less what the work is about, or one part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Cubans understand very quickly.
Yeah, Cubans often laugh. I have to say that they will laugh at a piece, and nobody else is laughing. They just don't get it. And I think that where we see tragedy, we also see irony a lot. And just I also think that the laughter comes from a sense of identification with the courage that the artist has to articulate the unarticulatable, or however you might say.
People don't understand. That's a good point. People don't understand laughing in Cuba, and it's very annoying as a Cuban. It's like, we are such a happy country. Sometimes laugh is fear.
Yeah.
Sometimes laugh is tristeza, like sadness.
Sadness.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes crying is laughing is a way to cry. Yeah. Publicly.
Yes. So I want to talk about a piece that you became very well known for internationally, and that didn't really evoke a lot of laughter from those who observed it. But so in the early 2000s, you really did become known for what most of us call performance art. And so I believe it was at the Tate Modern, you performed a piece that has a kind of cryptic title, Tatlin's Whisper No. 5. And the title refers to Vladimir Tatlin, who was a Soviet artist. And I think it was in maybe 1920 or right at the beginning of the Russian Revolution, correct me if I'm wrong, that he proposed making a monument to the Third International that was going to be like the rival of the Eiffel Tower. And this never got built. So you take that sort of fact, legend, might have been kind of myth, and then you articulate it in this really interesting performance piece that I would like you to describe it. I'll try to do it myself. It involved bringing people into a part of the museum where they would encounter these two, I believe it was two different police, maybe it was more, mounted on horses, who then in many ways controlled the visitors, whether consciously or not. They may not have been aware of how and what they were doing, but they were using sort of crowd control techniques. And in many ways, I saw this and immediately thought, wow, she is giving visitors a sense of what it feels like to live under communist rule. That sometimes you're really unaware of the degree to which you are being crowd controlled. And sometimes you're unaware of the reasons or the reality that you are part of a crowd. You think you're doing something all individually and on your own. And in fact, you're being surveilled, you're being controlled, and you're part of this larger police state. I wonder, I may be wrong entirely about it.
No. That's it. You have it. And also is the idea of the normalization of repression. where you don't, when it is something weird, because you should not encounter mounted police inside the museum, but at the same time it's done in such a natural way that people don't know, is this, do we have to react or not to this? Because, like this idea that we also have been educated to behave certain ways in front of power, And there was an interesting moment because the prompt I gave those mounted police was that use all the crowd control techniques, with audience. That was the only, and it was interesting because people were kind of surprised following it. I also want that piece to be done when there is certain conflict in the world, so people are already feeling nervousness about the others, especially because it's outside of Cuba. So this is also part of the dilemma that we live outside. And it was interesting because people were kind of following, and then there was one girl that decided not to do it. And it was crazy because those police were performing, almost like performing being who they were, immediately left that third space and became the repressive body they are. And they were so mad that this girl didn't follow their orders that they actually walked towards, like there was una veranda, and she was here, and they were approaching the horse, and at the point she had her body, the wall, and the horse. It was quite intense,
Wow.
So it was interesting because it was kind of a game until it wasn't for a few seconds, and then it went back to be a game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me was an interesting way of illustrating power,
Yeah, and the way in which people are complicit with it, and they think it's a game. Frankly, in my experience, a lot of Cubans, especially perhaps of the younger generation, who have grown up with a flippancy to the way in which their parents or others have described, the propaganda or the pedagogy, which is propagandistic, the triumphalism. They've gotten so used to hearing this kind of, dismissal of this stuff that when they actually do something, quote, wrong, and they hit the wall and they are encountering the police state face to face, that's when, it's just, it's a shock. It's a game, as you put it, until it's not.
Yeah. And what happened in Cuba, I think, is that the government for many years, or the regime for many years, didn't have to repress overtly because the parents were doing the job for them. Like, remember that you live in a place that has been more than 6 decades. So every generation had a different relationship with power and repression in Cuba. Yeah. I'm not going, you're the historian, so you know better than me how to differentiate those. But what is interesting, my generation and the one before me, maybe one after me, but the younger people are very different. But there was like 2 generations or 3 where the repression was not coming directly from the government. It was coming from your parents saying, don't do this, don't do that. Talk, don't say this loud, don't shout what you think, don't say in the school what you think. This is something we talk here at home. Don't say, like this kind of fear that was very hard to get out of, to be honest. Because part of what I have to say, I really, really think what the regime in Cuba is doing is horrible, but it is very well done in the sense that even when you criticize them, when you ask for your rights, they make you have a sense of guilt all the time. A guilt that is completely fabricated, that makes no sense, but it's this guilt of not being patriotic, like mixing stuff that had nothing to do with each other. But they have done it for 6 decades. So by the time you are going to school, not only the instruction, because not knowledge is, they give you is completely pathetic, is completely reductive, but it's also the fact that you are carrying with you the fear of your parents, your grandparents with you. So that's quite hard to, I think the younger generation has a different experience because internet and because things has gone so dramatically in human right now in Cuba that there is no way to defend anything. Because the other thing that happened with our parents is how hard it was for somebody who fight for the revolution. Like, to be honest, at the beginning, people were excited about it. It was a promise, But people who fought for it and who are in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, it's quite hard to say to your daughter or your son, I lost my life for no reason. Like I lost all these years giving all my energy to something that was fake, that was only helping the elite, the political elite, and making the family of the Castros millionaires. That's it. I mean, it's quite hard. Yeah, my mother didn't study what she wanted because she had to go to teach the ABC to people who didn't know how to read them. Those are big sacrifices,
Huge sacrifices, and the investment of so many millions of people in the idea that they would postpone their own happiness or their own ambitions for the sake of a kind of universal good, only to discover that that was more theater than it was.
It was an account in Switzerland.
Yeah, right. It was an account in Switzerland, and they don't have to worry. They've got their millions, more than the Cuban state currently has. They have their money. Not just the Castros, but those who are members of the military.
Yeah, I have signed. Yeah, exactly.
So, speaking of these issues of repression, I have read, and, I was very aware of your own experience directly with state repression in the mid 2000 teens. So I understand that perhaps the first time you were arrested was 2015 to 2016. It was an extraordinary moment because you either recorded the interrogation to which you were subject by the Ministry of the Interior, or you live streamed it, or both. I mean, this is very ballsy kind of stuff. And so, I wonder if you could tell us about that experience, if you could explain to us, why you were arrested, and perhaps you don't know to this day, but why you were arrested, and then the larger question of why art is so threatening to the Cuban government. I mean, I have heard many times Cubans say on the island, el arte no tumba gobierno, but it seems that the government hasn't gotten that message. I don't think they got that memo. So tell us about your experience with this arrest, and also what is it that makes your art so threatening, and I think Cuban art of your generation.
Yeah. Well, I have another say that I came up with, which is the art survive all dictatorships.
Yeah.
So because they will be gone at some point, right, with the work we have done about them and desenmascarándolos, taking the mask off what they're doing, trying to understand the system that I created to repress people, that will stay longer than that.
Good.
Hopefully. But I think that's, So basically, 2015 was not the first time I was interrogated. The first time I was interrogated was in 1994.
Huh. Wow.
Because I was doing a newspaper called Memoria de la Posguerra. And of course, I did the newspaper as a free artist because it's something that helped me living outside of Cuba. And my mom, she grew up in New York, so she was like, big scale in a place that was completely repressive. So there you go. But I was doing this project for an exhibition called Memoria de la Posguerra. It was my reaction to the generation of the 80s, a group of artists who had to massively leave the country because of the censorship. So I wanted to record what we felt, the people who stay in, about the big void that this created. And I said, oh, as a conceptual artist, I'm like, what is the best way to reflect this idea? Well, it was a newspaper, but doing a newspaper in Cuba is forbidden.
Right.
So I did by chance, and you're a historian, so I don't want to claim what might not be real, but one of the first, not the first, maybe, I don't know if it's the first, but independent journalist project.
Yeah.
One of the first in that, by chance, by accident. And the first time I was called by the Council of the Arts. And of course they did, because they have a system to the censorship. The first is they call you as friends. Like somebody there call you there to the offices so you're impressed or whatever. Like the director's office at the school, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I'm your friend. I give you as an advice, a good, don't do this anymore. Don't, you know, like they try to be this.
Right.
And then I did it again. Because I love the project and I love doing a newspaper, and I actually wanted to do an action newspaper all the time. Actually, the first newspaper was in 93.
Sure.
So in 93, they called me to a council, but in 94, I did another one because I was like, I love doing this.
You were distributing this among your fellow students, or what kind of?
Yes, I was distributing this in an exhibition, but the exhibition was in Habana Vieja. So all this, I don't know what happened, because those things happen and you can control it. All of a sudden, everybody knew about the newspaper. And to be honest, if you read it, it wasn't that, you know, explosive or, you know, was. But the gesture, and this is something people have to understand when you talk about Cuba and art and the government, it's not about the content of the work, because they know how to manipulate that. They know how to change the meaning of people's work. They know how to erase you from a career. They have all this mechanism that they do very well. It is about the audacity to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they like to repress. That's what they like to stop. It's not about the work, it's about you. It's about you as a citizen, because they don't want artists to be a citizen. They want artists to be hotel painting stuff, you know? So they want to use them. And the reason, and you say before, why art is so important in Cuba for the government is because they know the power of art, because they have used it for 60 years as propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, in the arts, in the music, in the dance, in every cinema, you know, what was the first?
Yes, I would say too that even the art, which is critical of the Cuban state, one of the things that makes their intelligence forces so successful is they'll take what is a critique of the Cuban state and they will promote it in order for people outside of Cuba to think that there is freedom of expression within Cuba. So, you know, this is the classic principle by which they often would allow for a film that was censored on the island and not seen beyond maybe one showing at Icaik to be, you know, distributed throughout the world at film festivals, etc. But you know that this is why they're so successful, is they co-opt even the critics against the will of the critics.
They also co-opt who they know or think is not going to go beyond or going to reclaim the original idea of the work. Mm-hmm. You know, either because they have no means or because their personality or because whatever. So there are certain people that would not do that with. Mm-hmm. Or at certain point, one person, they eliminate that option. I was even given la Medalla de la Cultura in the year 2002 because I was in Documenta, which is one of the most important exhibitions in the world. And every Cuban who was in that Documenta was given the medal, plus other people who were commercially successful, very young. So that was their way to, in their mind, to successfully create a new tier of younger artists that could serve them the way you are describing, or doing this kind of description of horrible repression in a way that is so lyric and so symbolic that is almost saying nothing, So the artist can feel, I'm okay because I did this, but they can use it. So yeah, but I digress. I'm sorry.
No, so the 2000, so the 1994 arrest, how long were you detained?
Well, it was, I did the second issue of the newspaper. This time, the first issue was about Cuba as a post-war landscape. This is 1993. And it is very simple. I live in Lebanon, and I went out sometime out after the invasion, the war in Lebanon of 73, 75. And I saw these crumbled buildings, like these, ruins.
Yeah.
And then one day I was walking Old Havana, where I live, and I was like, wow, I have a flashback. This is like Lebanon. But it's not physical, it's ideological, And then I had this idea, and the second issue was about immigration. Not a good subject in 94. Especially because all the balseros, and it was about me trying to get together with my friends again who left, trying to create this third space of not of being together, recognizing each other. And that was okay, this girl doesn't understand, but la buena. So they called my father, who was an ambassador at the time. They called him back to Cuba to go to my house, ask me for all the copies of the newspaper.
Wow.
That was quite intense for me, and I think it really marked a shift in my production, in my work, in a lot of things. And all of a sudden, my father was a Seguridad del Estado agent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he suddenly slipped into the role of being a surveiller of you.
Yeah, the secret police or whatever, intelligence police, which he was as part of his job. So very strange. So I gave him the newspaper, but for me, this is not a game, but I love, maybe the way I can survive it is seen as a chess game. As a chess game. Yeah. As a chess, but also a chess game. With power, like I do this, you do that, I do this, so you cannot do this, So I had already, for some reason, because last time they called me, I had already distributed all the newspaper in different houses of friends. So even if I gave him what I had, it was not everything I had. Yes. And he said, let's have a paseo, vamos al paseo. And I'm very naively thought I was talking to my dad, and I'm like, oh, great.
Wow.
And maybe he wants to go, I don't know, to lunch or whatever. And then we went to a house in Overall where two agents of secret police were there and interrogated me with my father. So that had a big impact. That's why I said I changed my work. My work was about this playful game with reality, creating a parallel reality and so on. And then I went and became a refugee of myself in this symbolic art as symbolism. I have to say I was paralyzed for almost a year. I didn't know what to do after that, because I'm an artist. What do I do? I'm supposed to talk about society. That's what they tell you in art school in Cuba, And then all of a sudden you cannot do it. Mm-hmm. So, and then by 2015, it was different because I wanted to do, I actually, when Obama and Raul got together and decided magically to erase everything that people had lived and say, let's start over, without a gesture of pardon or recognizing all the atrocities they have done during the time of the so-called revolution. And then I wrote a letter. That was my inspiration. Like my reaction was writing a letter. I say, I demand this. I demand, like a citizen, I demand. And I sent it to my sister. My sister sent it to a friend. They love it. They created a page on Facebook. This is maybe, again, very early on use of internet or Facebook.
Yes, in Cuba, certainly. In Cuba, certainly. Yeah.
In Cuba, yeah. And then they did, in 1 week, we had more than 30,000 people following the page, which was kind of the equivalent of what Archipelago did, like, I don't know, 20 years later or whatever, 10 years later, or some.
Yes.
And then people start saying, do it, because at the end of the letter, I say, what we should do is put microphone in the Revolution Square and give the chance to people to say what is the Cuba they want.
Yeah.
And it was almost, and I think the people in the Obama administration also didn't understand my work, because I think they see me as a problem maker or whatever.
A troublemaker.
A troublemaker. And the reason is because I was, again, calling the propaganda, because, are we going to be free now? So that means that it's only the money, or is also the chance for us to have freedom of expression finally. And of course, the answer was very quick. They came at 5 a.m, like, I don't know, like 8 police cars. It was like out of a movie. And they detained me. And then people were in the Revolution Square waiting for me, because I have one thing that I'm known for, is my word.
Yeah.
And I have nothing else. So people thought, she will do it. She's crazy enough that she will go into it. And then that created all this crazy amount of interrogations and repression. That day was horrible, because they even arrested people who didn't know who I was and didn't know about the event, because they didn't have Facebook.
Wow.
But they have this list. In Cuba, they have a list of the people that, when anything could happen, they go and arrest them, even if these people are not part of it. Because in Cuba, of course, everything is preemptive,
Okay.
So
you had said, how far had you gone? Did you have people who already had the microphones set up, or were you bringing that when you?
I was taken around 5 a.m, and the event was supposed to be at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
And of course, this is not these times. Like, internet was not so widespread like now. Otherwise, it will be a very different story. But people didn't know anything about me. Like, people were waiting, journalists were waiting, friends were waiting. And it was funny, because there were like, somebody who went there told me it was 3 groups: my friends or artists, the security police, and the journalists, And it was almost, I always say that the work happened, not the way I intended, but it happened because it showed the reality of the situation. And this is what I try to do in my work.
And did you in fact record this interrogation or live stream that, or is that just?
I couldn't record or live stream it, because when you go there, they take everything you have. They don't let you have phones. So one day I came with 2 phones, because I'm like, they take one. They would not know the other one, but they discovered it, so I couldn't do it. I was trying all these ways to do it, But what I did, and I think this is something that they were very mad at, is that every time I got interrogated, I went home and I tried to transcript as close as possible everything they say, they did, what they,
Yeah.
It was done as a way. It wasn't an art piece. It could be an art piece in the sense of a performative trace, but at the same time, it was my only defense, the truth, because they are known for fabricating stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always waiting for the moment in which they will edit a video or 20 videos together, to make me say something that I haven't said, But that was my defense. And I also, I have to say that I want to shout out, please,
Shout out, yeah.
Yeah, to Cubalex, because there is an association of legal independent lawyers, and they were amazing. They immediately, one of them, Larissa, immediately went home, and she wanted me to describe everything that happened. And I think she gave me, in a way, the tools to do what I did. And it was, I think it was very effective because it stopped them to create this fake stuff. And also, we can compare my testimony with other testimony. And by now, 10 years later, you have a roadmap to how they operate that the younger activists know now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, me plus all the other people, all the other activists that have done the same work. And this is a way in which we have seen patterns and we can anticipate things they do and how to respond to them. Yeah.
So before you were arrested.
Can I say something? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something very funny, because you were not supposed to do that. So they were very mad at me, very, very mad. But I had 4 interrogators, but the one that was more consistent, because, was a woman called Kenya Maria Rodriguez Larreo. And she was very, very, very mad because, it's, outing them,
Right.
And I put her name and everything and how she did everything. It was like very, and she was very, very mad. And then recently, like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, an activist friend of mine went to interrogation, and it was with her. She specialized with dissidents. And he arrived and she said, "Do you know who I am?" He was like, "No."
She was grateful to you.
I'm the famous Kenya. No, she has been infamous because what she does is not good. And also she has done it to so many people that now she's famous, in the sense everybody knows how intense, let's call it, to be generous, she can be,
Yep. I mean, so you created this transcript. I mean, just to me, it's fascinating because I have always thought that history, the creation of archives, and art are the 3 means by which Cuban citizens have been able to survive and resist, assimilation into this political culture and this machinery that the state wants to make of the citizenry. So, you kind of perfectly describe, in fact, coming home and creating, a historical document, a transcript of your own repression as a means for subverting its effects. And,
I have to say, unfortunately, this is our normalized everyday life right now. It has become the regime at some point fixed their attention in certain people. By now, and this is something that for me is very important. Some people say, "Why you don't do more? Why you're not more?" It's not my time. As an artist, I did something when I thought nobody else was doing it. As an artist, a lot of artists show different ways to do certain things or to respond to certain things. Now is the moment of the people. And the thing is, now it was a very punctual attention to dissidents or troublemakers. Now it's incontainable, you can contain it. And those historical documents that I'm talking about are happening every day. For me, the real history of Cuba is in Facebook. It's seeing all these denouncing, all the narration of all these experiences so many people have.
Yes, the publication on Facebook of these sort of writs, these advertencias that come from these warnings. It's like a piece of paper that somebody who is arrested has to sign and fill out, which is really, I understand it to be sort of the first line of repression against a citizen. Now it's become extremely common. And so a lot of people publish these, as you say, on Facebook of their own, where they were told that they have to come and sign this thing, or they are been detained and they have to explain, why it is, like what they did wrong, because in order to be released.
I still don't know. You asked me, do you know?
Yeah.
I still don't know why they detained me and why they held my passport for 9 months.
Wow.
I couldn't get 9 months. And one day they gave it. I have no idea why, what happened, who talked to who. I had no idea why one day they decided to give me it, and then.
It speaks in part to the arbitrariness of the terror, that the state gets to do whatever it wants and it doesn't owe you any explanation, even when it returns the passport.
There is a great documentary called Nadie from a filmmaker called Miguel Coyula, where he interviews. It's funny, they always say interview when they interrogate you, so I have always slip when I want to say interview. He interviewed an amazing poet, Rafael Alcides, and there is a moment where he talks, because he was a revolutionary, he knew Fidel, and then he flipped. When he saw what was happening. And one of the things he was talking was precisely that, the idea of randomness as a way of terrorize, because there is no systemic terror. There is all the time terror, but because you don't know for what reason you're going to be detained or released, or because everything is so arbitrary, it's more terrifying.
Yeah.
Because you never know, at least when there are rules, if I don't do this, I won't get in trouble. But there is no way to know, because you are a pawn they use for stuff, So negotiating with the Americans for looking better, for escamentar, I don't know how to say that in English, others,
So, what's interesting is that you have had these experiences then as bookends at the sort of beginning of your career, at the height of your career, and you still didn't withdraw from the front lines of our struggle.
It's not my fault. It's their fault.
Yeah.
Every time I say I'm going to forget about this, they do something horrible that I cannot stay silent about. It's their fault, not my fault, that I keep going.
So one of the things that I want to insert in here before we kind of cover just sort of a way of creating a timeline of what's happened to you in recent years, but in that period before you were arrested in 2015, you had already embarked on a project, which is very ironic, I think, today, in so many different ways, where you engaged with the experience of an immigrant or a refugee in the United States, or the experiences as a project, an art project. So I wonder if you could tell us about that, and what if you thought, when you were in the process of crafting this project, which I think was at least 4 years long, whether you thought that you would actually ever become a refugee, or perhaps a political exile. I'm not sure how you consider yourself.
I'll tell you a little secret. I am afraid of my work because every time I do a piece, it becomes reality to me. Like I see it in advance.
It's a prophecy.
So basically, I mean, I was interested. The original idea is not what I did. The original idea is I wanted to create a political party with undocumented immigrants in the United States. Very quickly, I learned that this is a two-party system. And so then it became more, again, a symbolic, while at the same time functional and util, like useful project, because we actually were able to change the status of 7 undocumented people.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Isn't nothing, like that's a very minimal amount of people, but, it's one of the, is the scale of art is not thousands and hundreds of thousands, like 1, 2, 3, 5, 10. So immediately became a space that it became more than anything a pedagogical space about freedom. It was very beautiful because I don't want to romanticize it, but it was very beautiful that people felt safe in the space.
And what was it you did? Explain to those.
What I did for 5 years was to create a space in Corona, Queens, where we use art to talk about immigration, and we use art to, this is a very big word, so I want to say, not transform people's life, but to kind of giving people tools to see themselves differently in the landscape of immigration and who they could be in this place. And there were beautiful things, like some of the daughters and the songs of the people working there ended up in Juilliard's, and they are artists now, or they went to Ivy League schools, or NYU, whatever. So it was, I think there were some results, but when you see what is happening right now in the United States, it makes you feel very, very impotent,
Yep.
And those people who were at some point confronting somebody, a politician, actually some of the undocumented immigrant woman group that was formed there confronted a racist elected official, and were able to take that person down. Today they are afraid again, because I still talk to them, and they are afraid. They don't go out. They ask, so they went back to how they were before the project, but with the burden or the pain of understanding this could have been different. This could be different because they lived a different life already,
Yes, I mean, it shows the fragility of what we think we take for granted as democratic gains, or certain degrees of public consciousness about the universal freedoms that we should all have. Freedom from fear being one of them. The right to a legal judicial process. I mean, we could go on, but the fragility of that. And then I want to bridge to, again, the last few years of your own activism in Cuba. What appeared to be a clear path to change just utterly collapsed. I mean, it seems.
I'll tell you something. I have to say something just because the activist in me. Yes, there are moments in which, I mean, politics are a pendulum in a way, or kind of a constant moving Japanese garden, let's call it, where you put something and somebody comes and erases it. But nothing is erased. It's accumulated. And I think, yes, now in Cuba, you see, I have to say that I feel like, I don't want to be accused of saying this, but it reminds me of some of the work of Levy when I see this dilemma he had about how to write about horror, you know. So it's the same thing I feel in Cuba right now. I never thought such horrific images were going to come out of Cuba. Nevertheless, the so-called revolution for the people and the poor, you know, and seeing the images of people dying without care. And I mean, I don't want to say more here because people probably know, but the same way that is happening in Cuba, the same way things are happening here in the United States, different things, horror is the last resource of dictators. And we have to understand that freedom, happiness is something you build, is not something that is given to you. So you have to do it every day. And yes, one day is going to be better, one day is going to be worse. What you cannot do is becoming that. What you cannot do is enter a game in which you sell yourself for something that is promised. You have to be yourself. Guste a quien le guste, you know, whoever likes it, whoever doesn't like it. But I think, yes, things are horrific in Cuba. Somehow in the United States right now, we're seeing something that for many people was unimaginable. But these are moments that only make people stronger, you know. And I hope it's because it's the last resource they have. Possibly.
Yes, authenticity and transparency are the two greatest weapons for fighting duplicity, hypocrisy, and repression, you know?
And I hope in both cases, I hope the fact that now to be an artist and protest in Cuba is lost in the sea of protests by the people is the best thing that could happen to anybody. You know, when I was the one person where all my peers were rejecting me in Cuba because I was doing activism and criticizing, that was tough, especially because I always want people to love me, you know. Yeah. But I'm so happy that now whatever I will do will mean nothing, because the mothers of those kids who are dying are the one talking now. It's their moment now, you know. And the same will happen in the United States. I think is going to reinforce. And maybe it will be a way to see the loopholes the original concept of this place was, and try to work to you know, tapar los huecos, no? To
stitch back together what is being frayed and ripped apart. So let me ask here about your leadership and the unprecedented acts of protest that some of us were very aware of between 2020 especially and 2021. And so for those who were unaware, in November of 2020, on November 27th in particular, you launched together with many of your colleagues this movement of artists and intellectuals that was in many ways embodied by a sit-in that took place in front of the Ministry of Culture. And these are illegal and unprecedented acts that really had never occurred in the entirety of the socialist era. So from 1961 until the moment that you did this. And in the wake of that, you know, there was a government campaign to discredit you. There was a government campaign to undermine what were supposed to be negotiations over the rights of artists and freedom of expression, the release of certain artists who had been musicians who had also been arrested. And then we get to July of 2021, where there are these mass protests across the island, you know, national street protests of millions of Cubans. And it's in that moment, I believe, that you were forced to leave. So I wonder if you could comment at all, if you want to, about that period. I wanted to end the conversation asking about how these events and this process affected, or you think has affected, your art. What what in what you're doing right now reflects a connection to the continuing now everyday struggles of all Cubans. So if you want to comment about that period, I mean, we would all be very privileged to hear from you. And then, this question of how all of this has affected your artistic expression. I really appreciate an answer to that question.
Well, thank you for the question. I didn't create this going to the Ministry of Culture. I just, for the history record, I joined it. I actually was under house arrest until the night before, which was very strange, so I could escape. I actually knew it was happening, and I told a friend, tell me when there is already 20 people there. Because if I am the first one, nobody will do anything, because I will go.
No one will show up.
So I need to be there when at least 20 or 25 people are already there. And we did it that way. And it was unprecedented, although it was not the first time. We had a tradition over years to go I went in 2015 to the Ministry of Culture and demanded to see the Ministry of Culture to return the medal of culture they had given me in the year 2002. So there is a tradition, not only by me, but by many people, to go there. Years later, I went to other artists, but we're always a group of 5, 3, 2, so very easy to manage, not very impactful, although I think activism is persistence, even if it's one person. But that was unprecedented, not only because the amount of people who went there, we started by 100, and by sometime people were like 300 or whatever, people were in and out, and it was very impactful to see that many people protesting in front of an institution, whether art or culture or not. But the other thing that was unprecedented is seeing a multi-generational protest. There were people from young people who were so excited, like, oh, this is, to older people because they were always repressed before and wanted to have that experience, or as well as the parents of some of the people. And there was a specific person who worked for the Ministry of the Army, who was quite high up, whose son is an artist. And I know her because I know the son. And then I say, why are you doing here? And she say, I don't want nothing to happen to my child. For me, that was very important, because this is a woman who worked in the economic area of La FARC, who at the highest level worked with the minister, who says, I don't want nothing to happen to my kid.
Right.
And that happened with other people. I know all the artists who went because their kids were also artists and they wanted, So there was unusual because of many things. Also because normally protest in Cuba is described as radicalized by the regime, because that's the way they defend themselves.
Right.
We are all terrorists. We are all, radicals. And radical is a beautiful word. I don't know why they make it so bad. But so in that same place, there were people from many different political points of view. And the third thing, there are many other things, but the third thing that I felt was great and unusual is the cross between, like, the visual artists were always visual artists, and this time you had all the genres together, all the practices of culture together. Theater people with visual artists, with musicians, and that was very scary for the regime.
Yeah.
Because as they told me in 1994, in my first interrogation, what they are worried about was getting people together, being able to put people together. And that's the biggest fear of the regime. Someone or a group of people who are able to bring people together for something. But yeah, that was the... And the other question, I think there is something I'm very nervous always about, which is this desire of creating a solo hero, like a Superman type activist. And I remember in 2015, my sister helped me a lot with promoting what I write because I didn't have access to a lot of stuff. So she really, really supported me in that time. And I remember fighting with her because she wanted to be me, me, me. And I'm like, it's not me, it's us, you know? And this is one of many things. And that has been a struggle over the activism in Cuba and the politics in Cuba and the possibility politicians have to see a future in Cuba other than what exists. And they are completely wrong because there's so many people who we know, activists know, but also are silent, waiting for the time to shine, that exist. And, you know, and at the same time, as an artist, what kind of performance can I do that is strong or can compete with a group of mothers taking the refrigerators to the empty refrigerator to the street, stopping traffic?
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, art has to shut up and let the people do the performances, you know?
Yeah.
In a way.
It's wonderful that, I mean, and it brings us back to something you said earlier, that the greatest honor you might have is that you would be left without a job, or you you wouldn't have to protest anymore, you know?
Exactly. And it's funny because it's true that after my first interrogation, I was super young. I was in my very early 20s. And I was paralyzed and I was unable to do art because I was conflicted. Like, how do I be honest with myself, but not, you know? But now I'm paralyzed, not because of that, but because people, the Cubans themselves, are doing much better symbolic acts and activism than any of us could do as artists.
Thank you, Tania Bruguera, for all that you have done.
No, thank you for what you've done too. And thank you for wanting to talk to me.
Thank you. Me voy a echar a llorar.
I know.
It really is. I mean, God willing, we have a different conversation the next time you're on.
Yeah.
For your
I hope it's for the... I hope next time we're complaining because we don't like the new people in government who are doing it like really, and we have all these complaints because we want things to be better, but it will be possible to do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I hope that the people of Cuba are not suffering. Like now is...
the suffering ends.
No, like the images coming out of Cuba, I would never in my whole life thought I would see those horrible image. Is necropolitics at its bare minimum. Yeah. You know,
I really hope that all of us that are part of this project of learning about Cuba, whoever we might be, goes out and tells somebody after they see this interview to do their own homework, because I don't think the media is covering what's happening in Cuba. The mainstream media is not.
I've been controlling myself because I really want to write to CNN, to Democracy Now, to MSNBC, places I go for the news that are not talking because, you know, that I'm writing a little text, but I don't know if it's going, I don't know what I'm going to do. That at the end of the text is how many Cubans need to die so we are considered for a few seconds of the news, you know?
That's right. Thank you for
Bueno,
joining us.
gracias.
Gracias por todo
And
lo
this
que
is a great job because I think the historians are going to have a huge, humongous work to do when all of this changes, and you're doing it already. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Tania.
Mm.
Okay,
Chao.
voy a
Nos vemos.
pausar.